So is the Panasonic GH5 still worth buying in 2020? We'll find out in this video. Hey, welcome to the video. I'm Mark Brown from Editor's Keys, and you're probably thinking, hang on, this is 2020. Why are you still talking about the Panasonic GH5? Well, you know what? It could still be one of the best cameras that you can buy in 2020. And in this video, we're going to explore some of the pros and cons. Now, Lewis from Editor's Keys has just purchased this camera as his main camera, and we're going to be using this in future videos here at Editor's Keys. So even though there's been a lot of camera improvements over the last few years, the GH5 still holds up. So let's go through some of the specs and some of the reasons why you should still consider the GH5 in 2020. So the first feature is the IBIS, and this is a feature we really love on the GH5. It still leaps and bounds above every other camera out there, including our Sony a6400, which doesn't have any stabilization built into it at all. Now, what's great about the GH5 is that you can use it completely without a gimbal, and the footage looks absolutely fantastic. Apply a gimbal and the footage looks even better. A great feature the GH5 has is that you can make customized settings and then set it to one of these on the top here. So I've set one at 4K at 24 frames a second. Then we've got another one set up with 4K at 60 frames per second. And then we have 1080p at 120 frames a second. So this is great if you're doing some run and gun footage. You could be shooting in 4K, then if you suddenly think you want to film something in slow motion, you can just change that dial and then you're instantly filming at 120 frames a second, and that's pretty cool. Another great feature with the GH5 is just the options of lenses that you have with this camera. You have the option of Panasonic lenses, Olympus lenses, and with a speed booster, you can use other lenses like Sigma and full frame lenses too. Now, to attach full frame lenses, I would recommend getting the MetaBones adapter, and I'll put a link in the description below if you want to check that out for your GH5. Another great thing about the GH5 is the image app you can get for iOS or Android. Now, we've downloaded this to the iPhone and iPad, and I tend to use this on the iPad because it's simply a bigger screen. Now, the beauty of this is for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you're vlogging on your own, you can use this as kind of like a reference monitor. It's obviously a big screen, so you can control your camera from a distance, which is really cool. But also, if you're on a shoot and you're focusing on getting the shot, you can have an assistant director checking over the shot on a separate iPad to use as another monitor. Now, the resolution on the GH5 is absolutely extraordinary. You can record at 4K 10-bit at 422, and that's pretty incredible. So the GH5 can record 4K at 60 frames a second, and there are still numerous cameras out there on Sony and Canon that just can't do this. So this is really great if you want to get some great looking slow-mo footage in 4K. There's even a 1080p mode where you can go all the way up to 180 frames per second. This gives you super slow motion footage, and the quality is still there. Now, we tend to stick to 120 frames a second, but having that option there is really nice compared to some other cameras out there. And the quality of 60 to 180 frames a second is absolutely amazing. Now, here's a bit of a con when it comes to the GH5. The autofocus on the GH5 isn't that fantastic. To be honest, the autofocus on a camera like the a6400 or a7 III is much better because it has that continuous auto eye focus that we've talked about in other videos. Now, the autofocus is okay on the GH5, but one feature we like using is the focus lock. So in a setup like now, you would position your camera, set the focus lock, pressing the focus lock button on the back of the camera, and then at least you know the focus isn't going to hunt around when you're doing interviews or vlogging to camera. Now, a flip-out screen I think is a must-have if you want to do any kind of vlogging, and the GH5's is absolutely fantastic. I think it's really good to have a flip-out screen even if you're not vlogging, because when you have an articulating screen, it means you can get really low angles or higher angles, and you can see every bit of the action as you record. You know, some cameras in the Sony lens still don't have a flip-out screen. Even the A7 III, which is a much more expensive camera, only has a screen that kind of slightly flips up. So that's a big win for the GH5. Lastly, let's talk about the color science. Now, one thing you'll hear when you see any review of the GH5 is just how good the colors are, and we have to admit they are fantastic. Now, we've put these side by side with some of the Canons we use, and we'd still say the Canons are just slightly better, but you know what, the GH5 is very, very close and certainly beats out that of the Sony a6400 or the A7 III. So if you get the GH5, you're going to get great colors. So there you go, that's our roundup of the GH5 in 2020. Now the question was, is this still one of the best cameras you can buy for video in 2020? And I think the answer is yes. You know, for this price range, at £1,500 with a kit lens, I don't think you can get much better for the money. Now the Sonys are obviously very popular and the autofocus system is better in a Sony, but I still think the colors, the IBIS is certainly better in the GH5. And depending on what you're shooting, you know, the IBIS may be much more important for you, because if you're going to use a Sony a6400, you need to have a gimbal with you every time you shoot if you're on a bit of a run and gun shoot. With the GH5, you don't need it because you can shoot with just the onboard image stabilization, and the shots coming out of it look absolutely fantastic. Now we're going to be using the GH5 for many of the videos going forward on the Editor's Keys channel, so let us know what you think of the footage in this video coming out of the GH5, and what camera are you thinking about getting. We're going to have plenty more videos on this subject, as well as reviews of the Sony ZV-1, which you can check out in the link in the description below. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.